Welcome back to the Theology of
Hamilton the Musical.
Part 2.
Alexander Hamilton.
So hopefully you've seen Part 1
Hopefully.
By this point. If you haven't, there'll be a link in the description.
So, quick recap.
So Hamilton is a guy from the Caribbean who has a really rough upbringing, who basically has nothing at the point that we meet him at the first part of the musical. He's lost his family, he has no money, he's only there because people have raised enough money to send him because he's quite smart.
Yep, and he lands up in America, punches a bursar because he wants to study. He meets Burr, and they become kind of like frenemies. And he just becomes this person who's really, well, at the centre of revolution.
Everything,
yeah.
Really,
yeah.
He becomes busy mates with George Washington, which kind of we see as we go through him get into a more and more important role. He becomes indispensable.
It's a handy relationship to build.
It is. He has Washington on his side.
And then he gets married to one of the Schuyler sisters, which is like a really wealthy, good status family. The dad's a politician and all those sorts of things. So it's a good relationship to have. It's a good wife choice.
Absolutely. And we see them going through the Revolutionary War, and just towards the end of the first one, we see the Americans have finally won. The world has been turned upside down.
The world turned upside down. So this is where we're picking up. So as you can tell, a lot's happened.
Indeed.
But there's a lot more to happen, which we're going to go through together.
We are. So enjoy Part 2.
And I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. It's time to take a shot.
After the war, I went back to New York.
After the war, I went back to New York.
I finished up my studies and I practiced law.
I practiced law. Burr worked next door.
Even though we started at the very same time, Alexander Hamilton began to climb. How to account for his rise to the top? Man, the man is non-stop.
Gentlemen of the jury, I'm curious, bear with me. Are you aware that we're making history? This is the first murder trial of our brand new nation, the liberty behind deliberation. I intend to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt with my assistant counsel.
Co-counsel Hamilton, sit down. A client Levy Weeks is innocent. Call your first witness, that was all you had to say.
Okay, one more thing.
Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Soon that attitude may be your doom.
Look at where you are. Look at where you started. The fact that you're alive is a miracle. To stay alive, that would be enough. And if your wife could share a fraction of your time, if I could grant you peace of mind, would that be enough?
Alexander joins forces with James Madison and John Jay to write a series of essays defending the new United States Constitution entitled the Federalist Papers. The plan was to write a total of 25 essays, the work divided evenly among the three men. In the end, they wrote 85 essays in the span of 6 months. John Jay got sick after writing 5. James Madison wrote 29. Hamilton wrote the other 51. How do you write like you're running out of time? Write day and night like you're running out of time. Every day you fight like you're running out of time. Like you're running out of time. Like you're running out of time.
So I wonder if anyone else is a bit like us sometimes, and you go through seasons of your life and you just work and forget to live a little bit. And this is a little bit of what we're picking up here, so this is kind of running throughout the second half, really, isn't it? He likes to work. Hamilton works all the time. He's a really hard worker, and that kind of takes the centre stage of his life, doesn't it? His work is his life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we see that sometimes it's in a really positive and helpful way, in the way that he helps kind of draft the Constitution and defend it and make sure that actually we're going to do something good here. But sometimes actually it's in a really arrogant and unhelpful way. Yeah. I think the first thing that we see is the contrast between him and Burr in the courtroom. And Hamilton stands up and starts going off on this whole long convoluted speech about how this is the most important trial there's ever been because it's the first in the country and all this. And then Burr stands up and says, "Shut up, all you have to say is he's innocent, call your first witness." And then there's that whole thing of, why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Because he is very intelligent, but he knows it. And you see as it goes through, it starts to impact the people around him.
It does, yeah. Right down to Burr and his family and the other people that he has to work with. It just becomes too much, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just that he's committed to things and doing a lot of work, but he takes it too far. He goes too far, does too much. And I think that's really a good kind of summary of what happens in a lot of the second half. It goes too far. It's not always a negative thing, though, working really hard.
No, it's not. It's good to be driven and it's good to be motivated. And actually, there are times when I wish I had a bit more of that about me because, you know, I tend to work under pressure rather than just constantly working well.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing as well to think of how this relates to kind of our Christian lives and our faith lives and where we would want to put the balance for that. Because I think there's always that temptation of, well, if I'm called to something, then I should devote my whole entire life to it. I should be doing nothing else. I should be working at this non-stop.
Yeah.
And yet, with this show shows us how actually working non-stop in anything, even if it is for what appears to be a good cause, isn't always a good thing.
I think when we hit those goals that we've set for ourselves and we've done all of that, we'll feel fulfilled. But actually, I think we kind of forget to live as well a little bit, and it can leave us a little bit empty.
Yeah, and I think we see that earlier on in one of the first songs, don't we? Satisfied. And how actually no matter where he gets to, no matter what he achieves, he will never be satisfied because there's always something else he could be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's learning to be thankful in where we are.
Take a break.
I'm on my way.
There's a little surprise before supper and it cannot wait.
I'll be there in just a minute, save my plate.
Alexander,
Okay.
your son is 9 years old today. He has something he'd like to say. He's been practicing all day. Philip, take it away.
Daddy, look. My name is Philip. I am a poet. I wrote this poem just to show it. And I just turned 9. You could write rhymes, but you can't write mine. What? I practice French and play piano with my mother. I have a sister, but I want a little brother. My daddy's trying to start America's bank. Under trois
Take a break.
Hey, our kid is
Stay with us for the summer. Let's go upstate.
Eliza, I've got so much on my plate.
We can all go stay with my father. There's a lake I know in a nearby
I'd
pond.
love to go.
You and I can go when the night gets dark.
I will try to get away.
Alexander,
Hi.
it's good to see your face. Angelica, tell this man John Adams spends the summer with his family.
Angelica, tell my wife John Adams doesn't have a real job anyway.
You're not joining us, wait.
I'm afraid I cannot join you upstate.
So I suppose the theme that stands out for me in this song is literally take a break, right? But I think the point to emphasise is that even Jesus had a rest. Even Jesus went up to a mountain and said, look, mate, just leave me alone, to the disciples. I need to be on my own for a few moments. I just need to breathe. And I think that is definitely something that Hamilton needs reminding of all the time.
And we see this perfect opportunity for him as well. It's over the summer. Congress is paused to go and take a break.
So this is where people would have a holiday.
even John Adams, who is the vice president and who doesn't have a real job anyway, but even he spends this summer with the family. And so Hamilton's presented with this opportunity to go with his wife. Awkward. And his son and daughter, and Angelica, who comes over from the UK.
And they are best mates, really, him and Angelica. Well, probably a little bit more. That's where we need scandal to pop up.
Scandal.
Yeah. Just that theme to take a break.
Definitely. And I think there's a real contrast, and you see between Eliza and Hamilton.
Eliza!
Exactly. Just in the way that they are at the start of this song, when Philip, the son, has prepared the 9-year-old son has prepared this little rap.
Yeah.
And you see this beautiful little image of family life with the mother, who is normally this really serious and kind of adult and grown-up person, beatboxing so her son can do a rap. And every time I see that, it makes me laugh.
And yet Hamilton had to be forced to spend that short amount of time with his family, and then that's it. You know, you've exceeded your visitations this month. Sorry, family, I'm off back to work.
And it's strange because when you see it, he enjoys it, and he says, our son is pretty great.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet it doesn't change his thinking. He's still, no, I've got to go and do work now.
Yeah. So I suppose it's an examination to us all, really, isn't it? To reflect on our lives and how do we balance work and life. But really, all of us in everyday life, not just when you literally take intentional holidays, but do you overwork, or are you good at taking a break and giving yourself time to breathe? And I think for our faith lives, it's helpful, isn't it? Because if we're so busy in churches with worship and business and meetings and roles and lunch clubs and coffee mornings and toddler groups, where's the time to just breathe and to be with God and to reflect on how God might be calling you, and just to have that time to really think about it? But of course, what we're about to see next is Hamilton taking a bit too much of a break from his family and forgetting how to say no to other people.
I hadn't slept in a week, I was weak, I was awake. You've never seen a bastard orphan more in need of a break. Longing for Angelica, missing my wife. That's when Miss Mariah Reynolds walked into my life. She said,
I know you are a man of honor. I'm so sorry to bother you at home, but I don't know where to go, and I came here all alone.
She said,
my husband's doing me wrong, beating me, cheating me, mistreating me. Suddenly he's up and gone. I don't have the means to go on.
So I offered her a loan, I offered to walk her home. She said,
you're too kind, sir.
I gave her $30 that I had socked away. She lived a block away. She said,
this one's mine, sir.
And I said, well, I should head back home. She turned red, she led me to a bed, let her legs spread and said,
hey,
hey.
hey.
That's when I began to pray, Lord, show me how to say no to this. I don't know how to say no to this, but my God, she looks so helpless, and her body's saying hell yes.
Whoa,
Show me how to say no to this. I don't know how to say no to this. In my mind, I'm trying to go, and her mouth is on mine, and I don't say no.
Show me how to say no to this. I don't know how to say no to this.
It's a bop, okay? I know the morality behind this song is appalling, but the actual song itself's a bit of a bop.
But I think this shows all the consequences of what's been building up over the start of this act.
Yeah.
We see Hamilton doing more and more, getting deeper and deeper into all this work, abandoning his family, abandoning his friends, saying actually this is the only thing that matters. We see him up to here with everything, with his stress levels, and there has to be a release somewhere. And unfortunately, because his family have gone away and he hasn't gone with them, it's into the arms of another woman.
It is absolute self-destruct, and I think this is a turning point, actually. This is where we see things go right downhill. I genuinely think this is the point.
This is the pivot of the show, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's, again, just relating it back to us in the way we live our lives and work-life balance, you know, how easy it is to make one wrong move, one wrong decision in a moment of absolute stress and anxiety and pressure, and how it affects every aspect of our lives. And we're going to see now some of the kind of fallout of this really terrible decision that doesn't just cause a load of stress and anxiety for Hamilton, but puts his family through hell as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in New York City. Are you ready for a cabinet meeting? Would you like to join us? Or stay mellow, doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello.
if we assume the debts the union gets, a new line of credit, a financial diuretic, how do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost. You'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver. Hey neighbor, your debts are paid because you don't pay for labor. Madison, you mad as a Hattison. Take your medicine. Damn, you in worse shape than the national debt is in. Sitting there useless as hey, turn around, bend over. I'll show you where my shoe fits.
You want to pull yourself together?
I'm sorry, these Virginians are birds of a feather.
Young man, I'm from Virginia, so watch your mouth.
I know that Alexander Hamilton is here and he would rather not have this debate. I'll remind you that he is not Secretary of State. He knows nothing of loyalty. Smells like new money, dresses like fake royalty. Desperate to rise above his station, everything he does betrays the ideals of our nation.
You must be out of your goddamn mind if you think the president is gonna bring the nation to the brink of meddling in the middle of a military mess.
Now how you going to get your debt plan through?
I guess I'm gonna finally have to listen to you.
Silly.
Talk less. Smile more. Do whatever it takes to get my plan on the Congress floor.
Now Madison and Jefferson are merciless.
Well, hate the sin, love the sinner.
Hamilton.
I'm sorry, Burr, I gotta go.
Oh, but
decisions are happening over dinner.
Two Virginians and an immigrant walk into a room diametrically opposed foes. They emerge with a compromise, having opened doors that were previously closed. The immigrant emerges with unprecedented financial power, a system he can shape however he wants. The Virginians emerge with the nation's capital. And here's the pièce de résistance. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. You got more than you gave.
And I wanted what I got. When you got skin in the game, you stay in the game. But you don't get a win unless you play in the game. Oh.
So you've seen there a little montage of a few songs kind of put together, because we think actually there are a couple of themes that really run through all of it, and it's looking at consequences and about how people disagree with one another, and about how compromise happens as well. And I think there are some really important things for us to learn. The fact that they've done these cabinet battles as opposed to just kind of standard meetings, they've done them as rap battles.
Imagine how much more fun though church meetings would be if that was how we dealt with it.
I think I'd probably watch PMQs more often as well if it was Boris Johnson rapping against Keir Starmer. that would be an interesting
That'd be
sight.
amazing.
But they're looking throughout at actually how things are dealt with, how disagreement happens, how decisions are come to. And I think it's fair to say there isn't a good example of this at any point in the show.
No, there isn't. And I think, do you know, the one part in this kind of whole montage of poor disagreement and of people dealing with conflict bad stands out to me is Burr's behaviour. So the song that we didn't see was Schuyler Defeated. So essentially, Hamilton's father-in-law has lost his seat in the Senate. And he's lost it to Aaron Burr. But Aaron Burr wasn't even of the same party, but joined the party to go up against him to steal his seat, all behind the backs of everybody else. So when they find out Schuyler's had his seat taken from him, then the Hamilton's hugely surprised to find out who's taken it, why it's Aaron Burr, sir.
Because there's that line, isn't there? Burr, since when are you a Democratic Republican? Since being one put me on the up and up again.
Exactly, yeah. And to me, that is so snaky, and I think that's how we really see the deterioration in their friendship here. I think this is where it's interesting, really, and there's a blurring of the boundaries, isn't there? Because, like we see in the first cabinet battle, Hamilton being really, really rude, and actually Washington says, "Come on, you don't need to be like that. I'm also from Virginia, and I'm highly offended with the way you're
Bend over,
behaving."
I'll show you where my shoe fits.
Precisely, and he's taken it too far. You've gone from disagreeing to actually just disrespecting.
Yeah, there's a great phrase. Back many years ago, when I used to play football at school, we always got told as defenders to play the ball and not the man.
I like that, that's good.
And I think that's something that actually stands up in a lot of disagreements and arguments as well. Play the ball and not the man or person. But talk about the issue, the disagreement. Be as brutal as you want in disagreeing about what the thing is. But as soon as you start attacking the person,
you've lost.
You've lost, and that shows bad disagreement and not the way it should be done. And that's exactly what we see happen throughout here. 100%.
And I think we see it all the time in our church families when we start talking about controversial issues. We see it in our everyday family and friendship groups. And I think, you know, we see it on social media an awful lot. Particularly when Christians tend to get involved in politics and some of the social controversies going on. We see real clashing of heads, and quite often there's this sense of, well, God agrees with me, so I'm right. And we seem to all assume that God is on our side.
It doesn't come at the end chronologically, But the one that kind of I think sums it all up really well is the room where it happened. Where Burr and Hamilton are talking.
Be in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's where,
another bop.
And that's where Burr realises actually what he really wants in life is to be famous and important and have the power to be in that room.
And will do anything to get it.
And wants to know how the sausage gets made.
Is that a line?
That is a genuine line from
really?
that song, yeah.
Wow.
How the sausage gets made. But that whole song is about looking at compromise and about how decisions are come to. And on the surface, it seems like, oh, actually, they've been grown up about this. Yeah. They've had a proper grown-up discussion. But then after this discussion's happened, after we've heard that they've got that Jefferson and Madison have got their way in wanting the South to have the capital, and Hamilton's got his way in wanting to set up this new financial plan, and it sounds like, oh, well, everybody's got something. That's good. That's how it should be. But Hamilton comes out then, and in a conversation with Burr says, along the lines of, I got more than I gave, and I wanted what I got. Yeah. And recognising that actually, as far as he's concerned, he could give that away because it was utterly irrelevant to him. It didn't matter in the slightest. And so it begs that question of actually, even in the way that we compromise, even in the way that we have these discussions with others, is it really compromising, or are we only willing to give up things that don't really matter to us?
100%. And I just look at these interactions between them all and think, where is the humility?
So I think, this whole section really challenges us with questions of disagreement. And as you've said, it's not just in church life, it's not just in political life, it's in every single day. There'll be things that we disagree with each other about. Yeah. And so in direct contrast to all of those really bad disagreements, those huge, arrogant characters, we then see George Washington, who throughout this, I think, is held up as a real kind of bastion of morality.
Mr. President, you asked to see me. I know you're busy. What do you need, sir? Sir?
I want to give you a word of warning.
Sir, I don't know what you heard, but whatever it is, Jefferson started it.
Thomas Jefferson resigned this morning.
You're kidding.
I need a favor.
Whatever you say, sir, Jefferson will pay for his behavior.
Talk less.
I'll use the press, I'll write under a pseudonym. You'll see what I can do to him.
I need you to draft an address.
Yes, he resigned. You can finally speak your mind.
No, he's stepping down so he can run for president.
Good luck defeating you, sir.
I'm stepping down, I'm not running for president.
I'm sorry, what?
One last time. Relax, have a drink with me. One last time. Let's take a break tonight, and then we'll teach him how to say goodbye. To say goodbye, you and I.
No, sir.
I want to talk about neutrality.
Sir, with Britain and France on the verge of war, is this the best time?
I want to warn against partisan fighting. Pick up a pen, start writing. I want to talk about what I have learned, the hard-won wisdom I have earned.
As far as the people are concerned, you have to serve. You could continue to serve.
No, one last time. The people will hear from me one last time. And if we get this right, we're gonna teach them how to say goodbye. You and I.
Mr. President, they will say you're weak.
No, they will see we're strong.
Your position is so unique.
So I'll use it to move them along.
Why do you have to say goodbye?
If I say goodbye, the nation learns to move on. It outlives me when I'm gone.
What a man, what a voice.
Absolutely. But it shows, doesn't it, just the difference in character that Washington, who is the most powerful man in America, as King George goes on to say elsewhere, there's no one else quite as big as him.
No.
And yet he could happily stay on in this position of power as the president for years to come, probably. Because he is the man that won them independence. He has started this country. He has led them through it. And so almost everybody wants him to carry on.
Yeah, but he recognises, doesn't he, that sometimes it's time to step back. And this is kind of a start, obviously, after the revolution of a completely new chapter for America.
It is.
And so it's time now for him to step back and for the people to move forward. And it's amazing the humility and the grace that he shows in saying, come on, let's teach them how to say goodbye together.
He's got such a sense of something bigger than himself, hasn't he? He points to something higher throughout it. I mean, there are links to God and the spiritual side of it for him as well, of what this is about, of having that time of rest, essentially, that we talked about earlier. But also about saying, actually, this country cannot be about one person. If it's going to survive, if it's going to be what we want it to be, we need to learn how to move on from where we are.
Yeah.
And although he's won, as I say, he's won independence, he's created this country, actually, for me, this stepping back is his strongest moment.
He didn't do it for the bragging rights to say, well, come on, I've won the War of Independence, I'm the greatest man in the world.
No.
That wasn't what it was about for him at all. Whereas Hamilton, for him, that is what this is about. This is about glory, about power, about being that top dog. Absolutely.
And I think this song even goes beyond just looking at it from an individual perspective. It's not just about Washington's humility and challenging, I think, us all to think how in our interactions and in those work situations, those life situations where we do have power and authority, are we willing to step back?
Yeah.
But it's also emphasising that importance of change in all that we do, because things do change around us.
We change as well.
Absolutely. And it's saying, it's asking us the question, are we like Hamilton, who wants to actually cling on to everything the way it is and keep it going as long as we possibly can before it all completely erupts around us? Or are we like Washington and actually willing to acknowledge something bigger than ourselves and say, do you know what? This isn't where I personally might want it to go, but this is where it needs to go to become something better. And that can be the same in our own lives. That can be the same, definitely the same in church life. And I think we've all been challenged by that over the last few months.
And how quick are we in our day-to-day lives to give the glory to God? And that's something that we read so frequently in the Bible. I've noticed more and more during the lectionary for morning prayer, just that kind of whole statement about give the glory to the Father, just as the Son did, give the glory to the Father. Now, how quick are we to give glory to God in the everydayness of our lives? In our achievements, do we show that humility, or actually do we grasp onto that glory and keep it for ourselves?
Now and again, I do catch myself and I do say, well, actually, it's God that's enabled me to do this. But nowhere near as often as I should.
No, but it's good, isn't it, to be praised? But it's just, you need to remember that thankfulness to God and that humility in stepping back and saying, actually, I do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, I think we've kept you waiting long enough. I think everybody's going to want to know what happens when Eliza finds out that Hamilton's done the dirty. So should we have a watch of that?
The Reynolds pamphlet.
The Reynolds pamphlet. Have you read this? Alexander Hamilton had a torrid affair, and he wrote it down right there. Highlights. The charge against me is a connection with one James Reynolds. For purposes of improper speculation, my real crime is an amorous connection with his wife for a considerable time with his knowing consent.
I saved every letter you wrote me. From the moment I read them, I knew you were mine. You said you were mine. I thought you were mine. Do you know what Angelica said when we saw your first letter arrive? She said, be careful with that one, love. He will do what it takes to survive. You and your words flooded my senses. Your sentences left me defenseless. You built me palaces out of paragraphs. You built cathedrals. I'm erasing myself from the narrative. Let future historians wonder how Eliza reacted when you broke her heart. You have torn it all apart. I'm watching it burn. Watching it burn. The world has no right to my heart.
So what we've just seen is absolute scandal. If he was my husband, I probably would have murdered him.
Oh.
I know. I'm just warning you.
Just going to make a note of that.
Yeah, I'm just warning you. If you ever have an affair and don't tell me, you put it in the paper, that's it. Like, I'm done. I'm taking the dogs and I'm leaving you here on your own.
Well, if you're taking the dogs, all of a sudden it's just become an attractive option. Well, no, but seriously, in this, I think it shows just how misguided and how corrupted Hamilton's priorities have been. That on this coming out, on his scandal coming out,
after keeping it secret as well, I think that should be said.
Well, yeah, he keeps it under wraps until Jefferson, Madison, and Burr turn up to his house to accuse him of treason.
Because he's been paying off the husband.
Absolutely.
The woman,
and only at that point does he think, oh, actually, maybe I need to be honest about what this is, because it isn't quite that bad.
And so he writes the Reynolds pamphlet.
And publishes it in the paper, and then we see King George dancing around stage,
Yeah.
throwing it to anyone and everyone who can read it.
But that is how his wife finds out that he's been doing the dirty on his family for months. It's absolutely appalling.
It is. And so we finally get to that point. I think one of your favourite bits of seeing Eliza's response.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, go on, you strong, powerful, independent woman. You don't need no man. You know, because literally, I just think her whole... I mean, this song, Burn, it's not one of my favourites. I find it a little bit boring. However, I do feel like she's got this sense of empowerment. There's a little bit of the Angelica about her in this, I think. Because I think Angelica's always been seen as the stronger sister. That, you know, the sister who is really, you know, that strong, independent woman. Whereas Eliza's more of the homely wife, the meek and mild, the putting up with whatever Hamilton makes her put up with. And this is where she says, do you know what? That's it. I don't want to be part of this anymore. So I'm removing myself from the narrative. But I just, I love it. And I think when we're hearing her sing this song and she's talking about, you know, you built me cathedrals from paragraphs and that sort of thing. You know, just what a smooth talker he was and how... everything that he did that he knew he shouldn't have been doing, it was okay, he could put it right with Eliza because he'd just write her a nice letter.
Definitely.
And he'd do one of, you know, it's like the husband knowing that he's gone to the pub for the 5th time this week, Jez doesn't, but gone to the pub for the 5th time this week, straight from work with his mates. His wife's going to be annoyed, so I'll bring her home some flowers and soften the blow. But there's a bit about that, isn't there, about this in what she's saying, you know, she can see now. She can see him for what he is. She sees him for who he is. 100%.
But what I really love about this song is not just how strong she is to say, actually, I'm stepping back, I'm having nothing more to do with this. You can see how tempting it must have been to want to go on the offensive, to just absolutely smash him and slate him in every possible way, because there are plenty of ways she could.
Oh, yeah.
But instead, she maintains that dignity and that strength to just say, do you know what? I'm better than this. I'm worth more than that.
Yeah.
I'm just walking away.
Yeah.
And the dignity and strength, despite that, what must have been incredible pain.
Ladies, I'm looking for Mr. George Eaker. Made a speech last week, our 4th of July speaker. He disparaged my father's legacy in front of a crowd. I can't have that, I'm making my father proud.
I saw him just up Broadway, a couple of blocks. He was going to see a play.
Well, I go visit his box.
God, you're a punk.
Y'all look pretty good in your frocks. How about when I get back, we all strip down to our socks?
George, I was trying to watch the show.
You should have watched your mouth before you talked about my father, though.
I didn't say anything that wasn't true. Your father's a scoundrel, and so it seems to you.
It's like that?
Yeah, I don't fool around. I'm not your little schoolboy friend.
We'll see you on the dueling ground. That is unless you want to step outside and go now.
I know where to find you. Piss off. I'm watching the show now.
When the time comes, fire your weapon in the air. This will put an end to the whole affair.
What if he decides to shoot, then I'm a goner?
No, he'll follow suit if he's truly a man of honor. To take someone's life, that is something you can't shake. Philip, your mother can't take another heartbreak.
Father.
Promise me? You don't want this young man's blood on your conscience.
Okay, I promise.
Come back home when you're done. Take my guns. Be smart. Make me proud, son.
Look him in the eye, aim no higher. Summon all the courage you require. Then slowly and clearly aim your gun towards the sky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
The moments when you're in so deep, it feels easier to just swim down. The Hamiltons move uptown and learn to live with the unimaginable.
They take the children to church on Sunday, a sign of the cross at the door, and I pray that never used to happen before. I don't pretend to know the challenges we're facing. I know there's no replacing what we've lost, and you need time, but I'm not afraid. I know who I married. Just let me stay here by your side. That would be enough.
There are moments that the words don't reach. There's a grace too powerful to name. We push away what we can never understand. We push away the unimaginable. They are standing in the garden, Alexander by Eliza's side. She takes his hand. It's quiet uptown. Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
So we've seen there the before and after of Philip's duel. The cocky Philip that we see walking around New York and calling out this person who slagged off his dad.
Side.
The Hamilton side, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then I think it's fair to say everything goes wrong. He gets shot and he dies, and we see the grief that is thrown upon them both.
And I think it's probably helpful to just recognise the mirroring here of Philip going after someone who slated his father's name, and how Hamilton goes after the person who slates George Washington's name, and how Hamilton was obviously forced by Washington to take a step back. Yet in this, he doesn't force Philip to.
He does the exact opposite and gives him his guns and says, do me proud.
He does everything that Washington warned against.
And in some slight defence, doing him proud does mean firing his gun in the air and saying, whatever you do, don't kill this man. You do not need that on your conscience. But recognising that actually if he'd have just said, do you know what? It doesn't matter. It's not a big of a deal. Actually, to be honest, he's got a point. I am a bit of a scoundrel.
Oh, yeah.
So if he'd have gone down that route, as Washington did, of saying, just ignore it, move on. We'll prove it. Prove he was wrong in what we did.
Be the better person, yeah.
If he'd have done that, his son would have survived.
Yeah.
Alexander and Eliza are both then torn apart by this grief.
Absolutely. And as we see, you know, it does bring them closer again in some sense.
Eventually.
Because actually only they can understand each other's sense of loss. But I think for Hamilton, this must have been such a momentous moment in his life. Like, he had so many opportunities to be with his family and to make the most of having that incredible opportunity to be a father. And actually, nine times out of 10, he wasted it. You know, he didn't take a break. He wouldn't rest. He wouldn't take a holiday. He wouldn't give his family the time they deserved and make them a priority. And now, when he's just realising after he's ruined his marriage that actually my family should have come first, it's too late, because now Philip's died.
And seeing Eliza's response, the fact that she is willing to offer forgiveness, it takes the whole song, understandably. And it takes an awful lot for them to go through. But she gets there, and actually the words that are used in the song of there being a grace too powerful to name in forgiveness, I find to be an absolutely beautiful image. And thinking about actually how that relates to all of us, how we all make mistakes and cause hurt and get things wrong. But actually recognising that there is a grace too powerful to name, a grace beyond anything we can imagine, that does say actually forgiveness is here. One of the other key themes that I think there is in this song is, again, shown in how Hamilton responds, and in that he starts taking his kids back to church. He makes a sign of the cross at the door and he prays, and then uses the line, that never used to happen before. And so I think it asks the question of all of us as well, is what kind of things make us turn to God? Is it only when we go through those really difficult and challenging times that we're willing to turn to God as a last resort? Or actually, are we willing to turn to God in good times as well? Or do we rely purely on ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's a really good, reflective question for us all.
Look him in the eyes, ain't no higher. Summon all the courage you require. Then count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Number 10 makes fire. He aims his pistol at the sky. Wait!
Striking right between his ribs.
ribs. I walked towards him, but I ushered away. They rowing back across the Hudson. I get a drink. I hear wailing in the streets. Somebody tells me you'd better hide. They say Angelica and Eliza were both at his side when he died.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that coming.
I think it's fair to say we didn't the first time we watched it.
No, we didn't, no.
You don't expect the hero of the story to die, I think.
No, strangely
but
not.
I think in some ways it sums up so well all of the stuff that's gone on throughout the whole of the rest of the show. We've just seen how we thought Hamilton had come to a point of revelation, of seeing the mistakes that he'd made, of learning from them and saying, actually, I can live better than this, I can do better, and so I'm going to. And yet here we see him challenging Burr, saying, you don't believe in anything, Jefferson does, so I'm going to vote for him, which costs Burr the election.
Yeah.
And then Burr saying, you've crossed me for the last time, let's duel. Yeah. And at that point, the Hamilton that we hope would have learnt his lesson would have gone, do you know what, this isn't important enough to die for, fine, if you want me to say anything, I will, so I can carry on living with Eliza and having the life that we want together.
Yeah.
But his pride doesn't let him.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because earlier on, when Burr was the seconder during the duel over Washington's name, he makes a point of saying, come on, we both know this is a waste of time. We both know this is unnecessary. And yet Burr feels driven to the point of, do you know what? That's it, it's time to duel.
And I think this song shows us that whole thing of lessons learned, but just a fraction too late. Hamilton, I think, gets that legacy isn't everything. That he thinks, actually, I could have had so much more time. I could have done so much more with my family. But instead, I've let my pride bring me to this point.
Yeah.
And we have that whole kind of almost mental breakdown as the bullet comes towards him, of realising how many mistakes he's made in his life. Yeah,
that moment of realisation, but it's come too late and there's no turning back now, because
the bullet is already coming.
Yeah.
And I think we see the same for Burr, don't we?
Yeah, you definitely, I think, you know, Burr, I think, immediately regrets shooting his shot. I think that's quite clear, you know, and when he talks about how I didn't think the world was wide enough for both of us, but actually kind of was. And
seeing that response of Burr in recognising actually that Hamilton might have been the one who died, but because he's let his own emotions and pride again get in the way, Burr is the one who pays for this.
Yeah, this will be a significant part of the story people tell about Aaron Burr.
I'm the villain in your history. When we let our arguments and our disagreements consume us, when we don't show grace and forgiveness and humility in the way that we deal with other people, actually things do go catastrophically wrong. There are massive consequences. And so having that sense of humility and grace is so important.
I absolutely love the ending of this musical, when we really see this emphasis on stories. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story.
I put myself back in the narrative. I stop wasting time on tears. I live another 50 years. It's not enough. I interview every soldier who fought by your side.
She tells our story.
I try to make sense of your thousands of pages of writings. You really do write like you're running out of time. I rely on Angelica. While she's alive, we tell your story. She's buried in Trinity Church near you. When I needed her most, she was right on time. And I'm still not through. I ask myself, what would you do if you had more time? The Lord in his kindness, he gives me what you always wanted. He gives me more time. I raise funds in D.C. for the Washington Monument.
Tells my story.
I speak out against slavery. You could have done so much more if you only had time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell your story? Oh, can I show you what I'm proudest of?
The orphan
see them growing up. In their eyes I see you, Alexander. I see you every time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell my story? Oh, I can't wait to see you again. It's only a matter of time.
Isn't it interesting that Eliza was kind of on the sidelines while Hamilton went off and lived his life and left her at home, didn't make her and the family a priority because he was so focused on his goals and on everything he wanted to achieve. And now actually what we see as we hear this story and this narrative and of Eliza's life is actually that it was Eliza who did so many significant things. And she says, doesn't she, that she had the one thing that Hamilton wished he had more of, and that was time. And by the sounds on it, she's used her time pretty wisely.
Yeah, she's done an awful lot, hasn't she? And so much of it is not just about her either.
No.
Whereas Hamilton's was all about how can I build my legacy? How can I make sure people remember me? How can I build something that's going to outlive me? Hers is all about actually, what can I do to tell other people the story of this nation, of what we believed and what we fought for? And so she goes to all the people Hamilton fought with and says, what was this all about? She goes and tells Washington's story. She raises money for the Washington Monument. She
builds an orphanage.
She builds the orphanage. The thing that she says she is most proud of, the most important,
is the orphanage. Isn't it interesting though that actually all the things that Eliza achieves, I don't know, I feel like you would imagine someone with Hamilton's backstory and life story would want to achieve. I feel like Eliza, coming from the Schuyler family with that wealth and that status, would want to try and do all the things that of course Hamilton wanted to do so desperately and achieve that height of glory. Whereas Hamilton, coming from a humbler background, one of struggle and sacrifice and actually nothing, you think he would want to do things like an orphanage, like telling people stories, and like telling the immigrant story in the war, but actually he doesn't.
But I think that shows what stories are for, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that Hamilton is so obsessed with people telling his story, but not learning from his story.
Yeah.
Whereas Eliza gets that actually she's seen all that's happened to Hamilton, where he's come from, what he's been able to achieve, and she learns from that, where he just simply seems unable to.
Yeah.
And so in building this orphanage, it's about actually knowing that someone like Hamilton came from such a desperate situation. So who else might be able to come up from that? Who else can she support?
Yeah.
And there's a great phrase that gets thrown around in church circles from time to time: saved people save people. And recognising the kind of that beauty in the story here, as Eliza has seen Hamilton be saved by the kindness and generosity of others, the people that paid for him to go. Yeah. And says, oh, actually, I'm quite rich and quite powerful. I could do that. I could save other people and help them as well. And so she then dedicates her life to doing that. And what a beautiful story to finish with.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, it calls us all, doesn't it, to think about what might we be remembered for? What have we done that is significant? And I'm not talking extraordinary things, but just in the ordinary of our lives, what things have we done that we might be remembered for, or that we want to be remembered for? Not in a sense of wanting to be remembered for those glory moments, but how would you want to be remembered? As a man who allowed his pride to get in the way, as a man who wasn't loyal and loving towards his family? Or would you want to be known as someone who prioritised the right things like family and love and friendship, but also worked hard and achieved something? And also, just to finish, just to remember that all of our stories are part of a massive, wider story, and a story that literally turned the world upside down thousands of years ago and still turns the world upside down today. And that's obviously the story of God. And obviously with Advent in our sights, just that beginning of the story of God, of that incarnation and just the beauty of that. And I think it's really, really good for us to remember that we are all part of God's story as well.
Definitely. In the same way that all of these people are just those minor characters in the American story, we're all minor characters in God's story, but none of us are minor characters to God.
So Hamilton, that's it. That is Hamilton, part 1, part 2.
And there is so much more that we could have
So
said,
much
but we are
more.
not doing a
You wouldn't
part
believe
3.
how much you have to edit and cut out of these videos.
Indeed.
But I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's been a helpful reflection, and I hope if you didn't watch the musical, this has made you want to watch the musical.
Alexander Hamilton.